And welcome.
Welcome. Hey, how you doing today, Russ?
I'm doing really, really well, and thank you for asking, Liz.
It's great.
I'm excited today. We got a wonderful guest on as an author, and I just finished his book, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah,
and first,
that'd be great.
You have a couple of things that you want to talk about.
I'm gonna share the secret of the day, like you say. This is all about the author adventure, the art and business of publishing, and we believe there are 5 secrets that any author needs to be successful. So we're talking about writing secrets, publishing secrets, launching secrets, marketing secrets, and distribution secrets, because those are different things in my mind, especially. And I've been in this business a long time, as you know, Russ. And Russ has been in this business a long time too. And not only as an author, but as a marketer and a promoter. And from a technology standpoint, we have so much more technology today than we used to have. So today I'm going to talk about publishing. One of my pet peeves is vanity publishing, and then partner or entrepreneurial publishing, which is what we call it. So a lot of time you'll see posts on Facebook or LinkedIn or other places where people will say, if somebody asks you for money, run the other way, run the other way. Well, excuse me, but publishing is a business just like any other business, just like finance, just like lawyers, just like CPAs. I don't care what business you're in. If you are a professional and you want to be a professional author, you need to consider this as a business, and you need to look at it like a business. And a business has cost associated with that. Now, do you need to pay $50,000 or $100,000 or $150,000 to some vanity press to help you publish or to publish your stuff for you? No, you do not need to do that. And if somebody wants to do that, you need to run as far as you can. But we are a partner publisher or an entrepreneurial publisher. Business people come to us because they want to leverage their business, and they want to write a book so that they can establish their authority, their respect, their reputation. And a book is another way to do that. And most of the people we work with want to help other people. They have survived some issue, they have been successful in something or overcome some trauma, and they want to share how they accomplished that or overcame that or were successful with other people. So that's the difference between a vanity publisher and an entrepreneurial or a partner publisher. And you should always check out. I always tell people, talk to 2 or 3 people, ask other authors who they've worked with. I feel like if you ask the authors that I've worked with that have 112 straight #1 Amazon bestsellers, most of them would say that the minimal investment they made was worth it. And we're always looking for return on investment. Our goal is always to help the author make their money back as quickly as we can. So that's it today, publishing. So that's a publishing secret. Be careful. People will take advantage of you. So always check out somebody, always run them through the Better Business Bureau or Yelp or something like that. You can just Google company names. And then, like I say, talk to other authors and find out who they're working with or what they're doing and what kind of experience they had. Because if they had a bad experience, they're going to tell you. If they had a good experience, hopefully they'll tell you. So that's
I think it's also important, Liz, to note that, like you said, the track record speaks for itself. And so if you have somebody that's just starting out, it doesn't mean they can't do a good job. It doesn't mean they can't help you. It just means that there's not as much experience as what you've encountered over the years. So I just want to make sure that people understand that, what you're paying for and what you're investing in is some of that experience and that education that you've received through experimenting.
Yeah, it shortens your time frame. And that's the thing. If you don't have the money to invest, you have to spend the time. And there's not anything that you can't do yourself that you can't learn to do. But how long is it going to take you to learn that? And so are you better to be spending your time writing and then editing versus layout and production and formatting and the technology and building a website and doing social media? I mean, there are a lot of moving parts to publishing once you've written the book. So, and so I know we've got a great guest today. This is I think the Reverend Dr. William J. Carl. So Bill was my senior pastor for about 20 years. at the First Presbyterian Church in Dallas, Texas, and he left us to go off to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, the oldest Presbyterian seminary in the country, and he did a great job for them. And I think he retired, but I think the Birmingham Church, Presbyterian Church, called him back for a short time, but now he is fully retired. So, Bill, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you here today.
Great to be with you all. Good to see you, Russ and Liz.
All right. So like you say, Bill's book is called Assassin's Manuscript. It's basically an international espionage thriller. So quite a departure from his nonfiction spiritual books that he's written over the years. And so I'm going to let Russ do this interview, and then I'm going to jump back in at the end and make a few comments probably. But I know you guys are going to have a really good time today. So thanks so much for joining us, Bill.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. So, Bill, this book you wrote, I just finished it, and I have to say that I was incredibly impressed. I was with the detail, the connections, and some of the stories and the subplots that got into this. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. And I look forward to this conversation because I thoroughly enjoyed the book and wanted to dive in a little bit without giving the story away. Right. It's kind of difficult. But so when did you start this story? Because that's a story in itself.
Well, 30 years ago, Alex Haley was speaking where I was in Dallas, and he was sitting in my office and he said, have you written anything? And I said, yeah, several nonfiction books. And he said, well, let me see one. And I pulled one off the shelf, and it was a set of lectures I'd given at Princeton that had been published. And he sat there thumbing, the author of Roots, thumbing my book. And he stopped and looked and he said, Bill, he said, you need to write a novel. And I said, Alex, what makes you say that? And he said, two things. One, you know how to write, and you write really well. And two, you know how to tell a story. And I said, what would I write a novel about? And he said, what kind of novels do you like? I said, well, Clancy and Ludlum and all the international espionage. He said, write one like that. Well, what would I? He said, think about something you know about. For me, that's old manuscripts. So it took off from there. And 6 different countries I visited to do the research. And anyway.
Well, the thing that fascinated me about the book was the stories that allowed the environment to come alive in different countries. Because, you know, and like I said, I don't want to give too much away. And if you haven't thought about reading this book, or you haven't thought about picking up or ordering it on Amazon, please do. Highly recommended. And I got into it. I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. So it's that kind of book. And hopefully anyone listening to this or watching this program will agree with me and enjoy the content. The thing about the stories that came together so well is even the stories themselves in each location were great stories, just like small episodes, just like snapshots into the environment there. And then all of a sudden they were all tying it together for different reasons. I think I would have to have a flow chart to lay all these stories out. So it probably took you a little while to process all this information, get those details. And so what's your working process like for this?
Yeah, it did take a long time. And this is the 12th revision, the version that you have there that you held up earlier. And so, you know, but I mean, Charles Frazier rewrote Cold Mountain 20 times. So who's counting, right?
Yeah.
But I did need to have an overall plot. And in our LeContePublishing.com that people can go to learn about how these processes work, I found that I needed to make sure I had characters who wanted something. I learned this in screenwriting. Your main character needs to want something, and all the subplot characters also, everybody needs to want something. And then you see their character arc. Well, I began developing the plot and I had a pretty good idea where it was going. But one of the things I always say to writers is your characters will surprise you with where they want to go. And sometimes they'll even talk to you and say, wait a minute, I wouldn't say it that way, or I wouldn't do this. This is what I would do. Aren't you staying within my character? Yada, yada, yada. So it's a process that just evolved over time, especially as I traveled to London for all the robbery of the Codex at the British Museum. That's very early in the book, so I'm not giving anything away there. And then St. Catherine's Monastery. I actually had a letter of introduction from the patriarch of the whole Greek Orthodox Church in Istanbul, just like my main character when he went to the monastery in Egypt. And now this is in Russia here, that picture there is the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, and one of the priests there, I believe, instead of the patriarch, but a very high level figure. And
here's another location.
Yeah, this is actually in Pakistan, and I don't have anything about Pakistan in the novel, but the point about a lot of these different pictures is that I had to travel to different foreign countries because I wanted the book to sound real when you're in Rome, in the papal apartments. Now, I didn't actually go into the papal apartments. I knew the bishop of the diocese, of Catholic diocese in Dallas, and he was a very close friend of Pope Paul, John Paul II. And he described for me, or a famous scholar named Raymond Brown had been in the papal apartments. So I wanted to be able to describe places so to make them so real that people felt like they were there.
It's really interesting because the detail, it made you feel like you were right there in the rooms or traveling down the hall or crossing the street. And I just really appreciate that level of detail in these stories because it allows you to imagine and take in the environment as much as the interaction between the characters. And that's what I really appreciate. Even in the mountains, some of the scenes later in the book, and some of the elements that you traveled through each country, it was just fascinating to me to think, how did Bill go through the process of calculating out the landscape of words and the connections between the words? And obviously, it does take time. So you traveled to each location just to get more essence in the words and in the vocabulary in what you were writing.
That's absolutely true. And I have in the acknowledgments a lot of credit given to people who helped me, like especially in the mountains. I mean, I just hiked today in the Smoky Mountains, for example, went to Andrews Bald over there. It's actually in North Carolina with my hiking group. But these descriptions are so important to me because I want you to feel like you're right there in those scenes. By the way, you had publishing misspelled on LeConte Publishing. You had an extra L in there in what popped up a while ago.
I saw that. Let me correct that.
Yeah.
And,
so the other thing that was interesting is Buck Revell, who was number 2 in the FBI in charge of counterterrorism and counterintelligence, and the main consultant for Clancy and Forsyth and all of those writers. He was my main consultant on all the CIA counterterrorism business, so that it becomes much more real that way. Then I actually interviewed 5 real hitmen, real assassins, 3 Americans, 1 Israeli, and 1 Russian. And those stories are just kind of fascinating, just how I bumped into these people and would say, hey, you need to tell me stories. One of them was Israeli. He was running a tennis tournament that my son, who's a teaching tennis pro in DC, was playing in Dallas. And he was handing out cans of tennis balls. And I said, where are you from? Israel. Oh, when'd you come here? And he told me, and I said, oh, well, then you were in the military. And he said, well, yeah, everybody has to. I said, what were you in? Well, Mossad. I said, oh, really? Which unit? He said, the Kedan unit. Well, I knew that was the assassins because of all the research I did. Okay, you need to tell me some stories. And he opened up and started telling me. He said to me, I had Arafat in my sights twice, and the order never came to take the shot. So
Wow.
I had interviewed all these. The Russian was a former mafia chief who was a champion in judo and wrestling and karate, and now is a minister up in the Ural Mountains, just like my main character. Murderer becomes minister. And I mean, I had to learn how a real assassin thinks and feels to be able to write my character.
Yeah, that's a fascinating introduction to something that we don't often think about, and having the opportunity to interview 5 assassins at different capacity is that alone is kind of a happenstance or an opportunity. I mean, it's not like you can go down to the corner drugstore and say, can you find me an assassin?
One of them was actually the son of an assassin, and he was a philosophy professor at Barton College in North Carolina. And I had been lecturing there, and I finished my lecture, and they said, we know about books you've written. What are you working on now? So I said, well, I'm working on this international espionage, and a hitman becomes a minister. Oh, so this philosophy professor walks up to me, says, let's go have a drink. We need to talk. And I said, okay. And he said, I need to tell you about my dad. He was a hitman for the CIA, and he didn't tell me until on his deathbed. He finally confessed that's what he'd been doing his whole life. And I thought he just went off on these jobs around the country, around the world for the government. He said, you would never have known it. He was a regular Little League dad in the neighborhood. You would just never have known he was a hitman. So
hiding in plain sight, right?
That's it. Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing about the story, Bill, that I really also appreciated was the connections between when you ended a section and you're thinking, oh, what happens next? And then it would jump to another location or another type of creative element, and then it would come back and it would tie it all together, and it just like the edge of seat feeling that you had when you're thinking, oh, I can't put this down, I got to know what happens next.
Right. Yeah, I put some hooks in. I put a hook almost at the end of every chapter, and they're short chapters. Did you notice that? Because I don't like reading books that go, oh man, how many more pages do I have to finish this? I want to go to sleep or whatever. But Daniel Silva and Dan Brown are a bit of my models for, how to put this kind of, but both are there, and a little bit of Name of the Rose, a little Indiana Jones. It's got a lot of different kind of elements in it. Yeah.
Now the book itself, the manuscript, is based on real stuff. I mean,
that's right.
The facts, the history remains in place that this is all, this actually exists.
The Codex Sinaiticus is the oldest version of the Bible in history. And the real archaeologist from Germany named Konstantin von Tischendorf took 3 trips to St. Catherine's, and he finally found it. They were burning part of it, thought it was just fuel for the fire. And he goes, no. And he offered to take it to the Tsar of Russia and said he would bring it back, but he never brought it back. And then the Tsar gets it in the neck. The Bolsheviks go, what are we going to do with this old Bible? And so they sell it to the British Museum in London for £100,000 in 1933. And get this, it was a crowdsourcing thing. So the people gave their pence and their shillings, and it wasn't some big wealthy duke coming in buying it. And so, I just thought it'd be interesting to have it stolen from the British Museum and then make its way back through Russia and see if it would go all the way back to St. Catherine's.
Well, I love the way that it evolved out of the museum and back to St. Catherine's. Not to give too much away, but the reality is that it still leaves the door open for a couple of other chapters out there or sub stories that I think you could go down that road, because I think it was really a great experience to have what took place in the book take place. And I think it was an amazing piece of history that, could, if you read into it, the way the story went. It was amazing. So.
Well, there are a lot of people in the UK now who think that the British Museum stole way too much from the Middle East, and that some of it needs to be returned. And one of them that they're talking about is the Codex Sinaiticus. Now, this book may not be very popular in the British Museum because I'm talking about the Codex leaving there. And actually, the British Museum is not where it is now. It's in the British Library, and it was moved in 1998, which gave me a problem as a writer, because then I was going to have the book take place in different time periods, and I didn't want to do that. But then I found out that every once in a while they bring items back from the British Library to the British Museum. And I knew that's when I can have it stolen. But there were gallery warders who actually told me how something could be stolen. The way I posed it, I said, I'm a minister from the United States. Now I want to know that you protect these documents. Oh, well, here's how you could steal it. I mean, if you're going to steal it, every day we turn off the alarm system and we turn a page in the Bible. And well, that's when I can have it stolen. So they actually told me how I could do it. So anyway,
I love that you did the research, because it was incredibly fascinating. So I want to bring Liz back on, and you know, she's known you much longer than I have. So I want to make sure that she has an opportunity to talk a little bit about her questions, her process, and some of the things that we can use to help other authors that are thinking about writing a story.
Sure.
And realize that whatever your journey happens to be, whether it's a year, 3 years, or 30 years, there's a story within all of us. And I believe that if you take the courage and the time to write and get it out, there's magic that can take place. And I just, I'm inspired by what you're doing, and I just really appreciate it. And I just want to say that here and now, to make sure that we have an opportunity to share this information.
I think it's wonderful what you're doing with Author Adventure and how you're inspiring authors and writers of different kinds. And my main theme is never give up. Don't stop. Don't say, well, I did the best I could, and you know, but do work hard, because as I say in my little piece that I wrote on LeCompte Publishing, great books, great screenplays, great plays are not written, they're rewritten. Hardly anything ever goes out as a first draft. So you need to keep at it, editing, and getting people to give you candid input.
And to that same note, you know, just like a great musician, it takes practice. It takes, you know, you continue to evolve, you continue to improve. And the research and the study and, you know, being able to learn how to tell stories is a skill in itself.
Well, fiction writing is very hard. It's not for the faint of heart. I have written 8 different nonfiction books and lectured all over the world with these. 2 have been translated into Korean. That's easy to me. Fiction, I mean, it is humbling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like golf. It is humbling. You know? And do not think it's easy. But you got to get into it and try it. And it's fascinating.
Well, I have to tell you that you made it look very effective, and you made it look easy from the reader's perspective. So,
well,
thank you. Amen for you and all of the things you're doing. Also, we have to talk about when the screenplay is coming out.
I told you I have 2 screenplays on this, but go a slightly different direction. I need to write another one for.
Well, let's bring Liz up and have a little conversation about that before we wrap this show up. All right.
Sure. Always like to see Liz.
Yeah, so that was going to be my question too. Not about the screenplay, but is there a book too? Do we leave we kind of leave it where we could bring in some other stuff, or?
There is such a wild sequel in my mind that, oh my God. I'd be 103 if I'll be 74 this month actually, and I'd be 103, 104 if I took another 30 years to write. I think I would write more quickly now because I know how to.
It wouldn't take as long because now you've kind of figured out a lot of it, the process, and that's what helped you. So if you're writing, like you say, I wanted to just jump back on because I wanted to be sure that because this is also Bill, a podcast. We pull this down; it goes out to our podcast platforms, to about 8 different podcasts. So if you're on Spotify or you're on iHeart Radio or anything like that, so it's LeConte Publishing. That's LeConte Publishing, Publishing, LeContePublishing.com. That's the website. You can check that out there. And Bill's offering that as a creative expression site for a lot of other publishers and musicians and artists. So go check that out for sure. At Amazon.com. We've got it running on the screen. We'll put it on the show notes. But if you just want to search Amazon, it's William J. Carl. So look under his author name is William J. Carl. It's Assassin's Manuscript. So you can see there, it's this kind of a brown and gold thing with the manuscript on the front cover there. So go and check that out. It's a paperback and an ebook, and you can get that today by going to Amazon, and you can be reading just like Russ and I had. And so I was lucky in that Bill was sending me some versions along, and so really proud of his finished version, that he did get the finished version done. I know he made a lot of edits over the long road. And that's the thing, you write and you write and you write and you edit and you edit and you edit, you write and you edit, you write and you edit. And that's the process. So I appreciate that Bill would say, never give up. Okay. Because it's worth it. We've got Tricia here. Pat Shimon just said, yes, it's worth it. Her book's nonfiction, but she did the same thing. She did a lot of research, and that's a part of it. So you do your research, come up with your story, tell your stories. So that's the important thing. So we appreciate Mary and Tricia and Jane. I think Jane's on watching too. And so we appreciate all of y'all, Brianna, TK, that are watching here today, the show. Bill, if we got a few minutes left, what would you tell somebody that's starting out? Is it just the never give up, or is there some other tips or strategies that you want to share with somebody that maybe is a new author?
Yes, the never give up is a big one, but I would say get a story you're excited about.
Yeah.
It's very hard to write a story that's kind of you need to. I'm so easily bored myself. Okay. I mean, I am really easily bored, and I don't want to write anything that's boring. Now, Liz had to sit there and listen to me preach for 22 years, and we were on TV to 500,000 people across the state of Texas and ABC and all that. But when I would work on a sermon, there'd be a paragraph like, that's boring. And I would just X through it. I can't get up and say that if I think it's boring myself. Yeah, so don't write anything boring. Write something you're excited about, something that will be fun for you, not drudgery,
Right.
Go for it. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, because you're going to live with it for a long time. I mean, I started writing in 92. So I've got one book, like you say, that I've lived with for 30 years. Now it's evolved, and I've had a second edition, and I've done some other versions of it. The same thing, my Western Legend books from 10 years ago. We just did a a younger version of that with the illustrations. And so it does evolve, and you evolve, and you get better as you continue to write. So I would encourage people to write. I'm with Bill. Fiction is much more difficult than nonfiction, for sure. The competition is much greater, but you can find your audience today, which is the great thing. As Russ knows, he's been in technology here for years, and you can build those connections online yourself. And you can build your audience and that readership. And then if they like you, like Russ, they're going to want to say, what's next, Bill? What's next? What's next? Let me go check out something else you got. So that's the thing. And then screenwriting, that's a whole another process too. And but that's something that people can engage in. Yeah.
You
So
know,
what?
I have one screenplay that won the Telluride IndieFest screenwriting contest, and I've turned it into a play, and now turning it into a musical. It's a totally different kind of story from this novel. It's a romantic comedy called Maggie's Perfect Match. Maggie is a matchmaker, and she finds out she's dying of cancer and tries to match her husband with someone before she's gone.
Right.
And she does match him with her hospice nurse, not realizing that they were lovers in college. And so the audience knows, but she doesn't. And so she's pushing him out on dates while she's trying on wigs, and it's all a wild story. Anyway, she's driving the daughter crazy because she's trying to find somebody for the daughter. But now the moment they fall deeply in love again, she finds out she's going to live. And now, how do we unravel this dilemma? It's a O. Henry-esque twist.
Oh, man.
Perfect Match. So it's a wild story.
Wow.
I want to mention one more thing about LeConte Publishing. LeConte is the mountain that I meant even featured in the novel, but it's the iconic mountain of the Smoky Mountains, which has more people visiting than anywhere else in the country in National Park. And everything around here is named LeConte Realty, LeConte Medical. I mean, where I live around here. And I do have lots of scenes in Maryville, as you know, because you've read it. But I thought, well, let me try LeConte Publishing. And nobody had gotten it, so I grabbed it. But what's fascinating is the word conte, C-O-N-T-E, is the word for story in French. So what this says is the story publishing.com. And so it's kind of perfect, a perfect match.
That just fits, Bill. I just love that. And to that end, I guess we can wrap it up, because that's a great ending. And Liz, thank you so much for being here. And Bill, thank you so much for joining and sharing the story and the history of the book with us. And anyone out there that wants to sit down, enjoy a great story, a great process of reading a novel, I would just encourage you to go out there to Amazon and order that right now. I'll put this up there one more time down on the ticker. And it's something that you can do. It'll be in the show notes, and it'll be shared out as well. So I really enjoyed it, Bill. Appreciate you and all the work that you're doing in this. And Liz, as always, it's a pleasure, and look forward to the next episode. And with that,
episode 9 is over with, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 5 p.m. with the next great author. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Take care.
All right.